why are there not more people talking about the most dangerous flashpoint in Asia, where a single spark could ignite a conflict that draws in the world's biggest powers? The South China Sea is on a knife's edge, and what happens here could change the fate of nations. But what if I told you that Indonesia, a country often seen as a cautious giant, is now prepared to defend the Philippines at all costs against China? The answer might surprise you. The year is 2025. Tensions in the South China Sea have reached a boiling point, with the world's eyes fixed on this volatile region. The air is thick with uncertainty, and every move is being watched, analyzed, and debated by governments and citizens alike. The world is watching as a Chinese Coast Guard vessel rams a Philippine supply boat in the South China Sea. The collision is sudden, violent, and unmistakably intentional, a flashpoint that instantly dominates global headlines and social media feeds. This deliberate act of aggression cripples the smaller Filipino boat, sending a brutal message from Beijing. The battered vessel struggles to stay afloat, its crew scrambling for safety as the imposing Chinese ship hovers nearby, asserting dominance over contested waters. The Filipino crew was on a routine mission, supplying soldiers stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting World War II-era ship intentionally grounded on a remote sandbar. For Manila, this ship is more than a relic. It's a living symbol of Philippine sovereignty, a lonely outpost in a sea of tension. The incident, live-streamed for the world to see, showed the fear in the eyes of the Filipino sailors and the cold aggression of the Chinese crew. The footage spread rapidly, igniting outrage and concern across the globe and making it impossible for any nation to ignore what had happened. The international community issued statements of condemnation, but words have done little to stop China's relentless push. Despite the outcry, Beijing's strategy remains unchanged, and the world is left wondering if diplomatic pressure will ever be enough. For years, the Philippines has faced this pressure alone, filing diplomatic protests and appealing to international law. Each protest is met with silence or defiance, and every legal victory is overshadowed by the reality on the water. The collision was more than a maritime clash. It was a test of wills and alliances. The stakes are higher than ever, as regional powers and global superpowers weigh their next moves in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. China was testing the resolve of the Philippines and the commitment of the United States. The world's two largest militaries now find themselves in a tense standoff, each side calculating the risks of escalation and the costs of backing down. The world held its breath, waiting for the response. In capitals from Washington to Tokyo, leaders convened emergency meetings, while ordinary people watched events unfold with growing anxiety, aware that the next move could change the course of history. Surprisingly, the strongest condemnation came from Indonesia, a regional giant that had walked a careful diplomatic line. Jakarta's voice, long measured and cautious, now rang with unexpected force. Jakarta issued a sharp statement, declaring that an attack on Philippine sovereignty was a threat to the entire region. The message was clear: Southeast Asia would not stand by as one of its own was threatened. The sleeping giant of Southeast Asia was beginning to stir, signaling that the balance of power in the region might be shifting. The world watched, uncertain of what would come next, as the first sparks of a larger conflict flickered in the South China Sea. For years, the Philippines has lived under the ever-expanding shadow of China, a powerful neighbor whose ambitions have grown bolder with each passing year. The tension between the two countries is palpable, felt not just in government halls, but in the daily lives of ordinary Filipinos. It's a classic David versus Goliath story, where small Filipino fishing boats find themselves dwarfed by massive Chinese Coast Guard vessels patrolling the contested waters. China claims almost the entire South China Sea, using the controversial Nine-Dash Line to justify its sweeping claim over these resource-rich waters, despite protests from neighboring countries. This line cuts deep into the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, encroaching on areas recognized by international law as belonging to the Philippines, and challenging the very rules that govern the world's oceans. In 2016, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled decisively in favor of the Philippines, invalidating China's so-called historical claims and upholding the Philippines' rights to its own waters. But Beijing flatly rejected the ruling, dismissing it as nothing more than a piece of scrap paper. Instead of backing down, China doubled down, ramping up its presence and taking even more aggressive actions in the region. China began building artificial islands at a breathtaking pace, transforming once submerged reefs into sprawling military outposts, complete with runways, radar installations and missile launchers, fortifying its grip on the disputed sea. From these new bases, China projects its power far and wide, harassing Filipino fishermen, blocking access to traditional fishing grounds and asserting control over vital sea lanes. The psychological toll on the Philippines has been immense. Fishermen, once free to roam these waters, are now chased away, their livelihood stolen and their sense of security shattered. The government in Manila has tried every tool at its disposal: diplomacy, strengthening alliances with other nations, and modernizing its navy. Yet, despite these efforts, they remain outmatched by China's overwhelming military and economic might. The BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting World War II-era ship grounded at the Second Thomas Shoal, stands as a symbol of Filipino defiance. Here, Filipino Marines endure harsh, isolated conditions, holding the line against constant pressure. Chinese ships now circle the shoal relentlessly, trying to block resupply missions and starve the Filipino soldiers out, turning the area into a flashpoint of tension. This is the front line of China's grey zone warfare, a battle fought not just with weapons but with intimidation, psychological pressure, and the ever-present threat of escalation. While the world's attention was fixed on the Philippines and its tense standoff with China, another story was quietly unfolding just to the south. China's ambitions, never content to rest, began to shift their focus toward Indonesia, the sprawling archipelago that forms the southern edge of the South China Sea. Indonesia, the largest and most populous country in Southeast Asia, has long seen itself as a natural leader in the region, proud of its diversity and its strategic position. Jakarta believed it was not a direct claimant in the South China Sea dispute and positioned itself as a neutral mediator, seeking to calm tensions and promote dialogue among its neighbors. But this sense of neutrality was challenged when China's sweeping 9-dash line overlapped with Indonesia's exclusive economic zone around the resource-rich Natuna Islands, creating a new flashpoint. Beijing's assertion of so-called traditional fishing rights in these waters was flatly rejected by Jakarta, which saw it as a direct threat to its sovereignty and maritime resources. The issue quickly escalated into a major point of friction, as Chinese fishing fleets repeatedly entered Indonesia's waters, sparking tense standoffs at sea and raising alarm in Jakarta. Jakarta responded with force and determination, chasing out Chinese vessels, arresting fishermen, and making it clear that incursions would not be tolerated. In a powerful show of resolve, President Joko Widodo visited the Natuna Islands himself, even holding a cabinet meeting aboard a warship to send a message to Beijing and the world. The message was unmistakable. Indonesia would not give up an inch of its territory, no matter the pressure or the provocations. The defense of the Natunas became a matter of national pride, with the Indonesian military rapidly bolstering its presence, conducting exercises, and fortifying the islands to ensure their sovereignty remained unchallenged. The ramming of the Philippines supply boat was the final straw for Jakarta. They saw in the Philippines' plight a reflection of their own vulnerability. The incident was an attack on the regional order and the principle of peaceful dispute resolution. Indonesia's statement was a diplomatic earthquake, linking the security of the Philippines to their own. This was a dramatic shift from cautious neutrality to active solidarity. By standing with the Philippines, Indonesia sent a message to Beijing and the region: our fates are linked. Indonesia recalled its ambassador from Beijing and increased naval patrols, challenging China's control. The world was surprised by Indonesia's bold stand, but this alliance was forged in secret. For months, military and diplomatic officials from Indonesia and the Philippines met quietly. They built a partnership based on a shared threat and vision for the region. These secret talks were driven by a new generation of pragmatic military leaders. They shared intelligence, analyzed China's tactics, and discussed joint operational concepts. The cooperation involved concrete actions, with small-scale joint military exercises. Indonesian special forces trained with Filipino counterparts, and naval officers participated in exchange programs. They were building trust, interoperability, and a brotherhood. The goal was a seamless defense partnership, ready to respond to Chinese aggression.